We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Einstein said that the definition of insanity was doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. Well, it seems someone should inform President Joe Biden of this tried and tested adage. While the United States dwells in the quagmires of inflation, he's once again opted for a more of the same strategy by reappointing Jerome Powell as head of the Federal Reserve, and with a progressive kicker to boot. Neil Brainard will be the vice chair of the central bank, an out-and-out progressive no less. Add to this plans to release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserves, and we may have a recipe for disaster. Well, we're joined by economist and author Mr. Andrew Moran to figure out if this is a brilliant strategy or just more banging one's head against the wall. Thanks for being here, Andrew.
Thank you for having me.
So the decision to put Powell back in the Fed and Brainard at the central bank, what's the thinking behind this?
Well, when it comes to Jerome Powell, I think it's more about continuity. Now that the Federal Reserve is trimming its stimulus and relief programs, mainly the $15 a month in asset buying in the part of the pandemic era QE program, the idea is that since Powell started it, that he should end it as well. And this is something that the markets have cheered. They cheered when the announcement was made. When they did it before the opening bell, and the markets were happy about that because it creates a level of certainty now. You're not going to have a wild card like Brainard running monetary policy and then changing things around. So they like that. When it comes to Brainard, I think it's more of a case of appeasing the progressives. She is a Democrat, yes, but most importantly, her policies are in line with folks like the Squad. They were championing her appointment to the head of the Fed. She likes interventions. She likes the idea that the Fed should include climate change in its mandate. She likes CBDCs. So she's all around interventionist, more of the same, more of progressive thinking. Even if Powell and Brainard were not chosen, that another interventionist would have been appointed to the head of the Fed. That's just the way it goes in politics, whether it's a Republican administration or a Democratic administration.
Keynesians only need apply. So is this a future setup to get Brainard into the higher spot where she'll continue to, for example, echo the policies that inflation is good but also transitory? Or is it perhaps a way of ensuring that Biden's legacy isn't tarnished by an abrupt volte-face further down the line with a new head?
Well, I'll go into that in a moment, but you're correct about the transitory line. She has a poor track record too. She also uttered the whole inflation's transitory, inflation's not going to be here, all that nonsense. So she has just as bad of a record as Jerome Powell in this. Now, when it comes to the long-term prospects of Brainard, you're absolutely correct. This is more of a long-term move for Biden. Biden's essentially setting her up for that role in the future. Should the Democrats retain the White House in 2024 or the next go around whenever the Democrats, take charge of the executive branch again. There was a lot of talk before the announcement was made that he would promote her to the most powerful position in the world. All the markets were betting either between Powell and Brainard. But I guess the agreement was that it's not her time, but she will have quite the influence at the central bank as Powell's right-hand woman. But unfortunately, she's going to be another Yellen incarnate. She's going to, and that's never a good thing, of course. She's going to have this. She's had all these years of experience in the Fed. She's going to one day run the Fed, then perhaps she'll be head of the Treasury Department. So she's a second coming of Janet Yellen.
Okay, so let's talk about oil for a moment. Oil is the big story for the week economically. With news that President Biden, he plans to release oil from the strategic reserves. Now, is this like former UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown selling off the nation's gold reserves at an all-time low and then claiming it as a masterstroke of financial management?
Yeah, that has to be one of the greatest boondoggles in modern UK history. Not only was the timing of the sales horrific, the reasoning behind the decision was just as idiotic. He was claiming that it was about diversification. He liked the volatility in gold markets. What the hell? Gold is a 5,000-year-old metal. Why the heck would you not want that in your portfolio as part of diversification? What was Brown thinking? So
you tell me.
So the Biden administration, they finally announced that they're releasing the 50 million barrels from the strategic reserves. He's pushing China, or China has done the same thing, but now he wants more coordination. Japan, South Korea, India, they're all working on plans in doing this. But I would note that this 50 million figure that the administration announced on November 23rd, that already includes 18 million barrels that were already authorized for auction. So this is more like a 32 million barrel fresh announcement. This is going to be a short-term fix for a structural problem. It's not going to make progressives happy because on one hand, he's only tapping into these reserves, but he also allowed the auction of 80 million acres of drilling on public land and water in the Gulf of Mexico. So that's not going to please progressives. It's still going to make oil more expensive. You saw that in the aftermath of the announcement, oil prices were rallying. It was remarkable to see the WTI contracts were up, I think, $2, and the natural gas was also up, I think, 5%. So this is not going to achieve much long-term pause for the energy crisis.
So the reasoning behind this is to give consumers a break at the petrol pumps, at the gas pumps. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like that's actually going to work at all. So this is very short-sighted. I mean, they're called strategic reserves for a very, very good reason. Mm-hmm. Why isn't Biden just perhaps letting the pipelines reopen or granting the leases for the pipelines?
Well, that's a good question. It's just he's seeped in this ideological green energy, green economy transition. But what I find ironic is that he accused the oil and gas sector of price fixing. That he wants to investigate gasoline stations for not lowering the price of gas. But this is exactly what he's doing. He's price fixing. What the heck is going on in the administration? But yeah, most definitely, this is a short term. This is maybe, just maybe, provide short term relief. But there are so many problems of this from a basic economic standpoint. This move is going to artificially lower prices, fine. But it's going to increase demand because of the artificially driven decline. It's going to tighten supplies because of this artificially controlled demand. It's going to discourage production and exploration because of these lower prices. So this is just interventionism 101 that only, compounds these problems. Goldman Sachs, they came out with a research note just before the announcement. They were saying that any type of, releasing of the strategic reserves is going to raise prices in the long term. So if he wants to kill the U.S. oil and gas industry, this is the best way to do it. And one more thing too. The U.S. has been energy independent under Trump for a few years, but now with these types of moves and with discouraging investment in domestic oil and gas, this is going to benefit OPEC in the long run. If OPEC just stays quiet in the next meeting, doesn't change anything, they're going to completely benefit from all these pumping of strategic reserves because it's going to add to the market. But once the well is dry, OPEC can just take advantage of the higher prices, and you see that with the higher prices going right now, despite the announcement. So OPEC, they're going to have their ministerial meeting soon, and they can just sit there and say, okay, we're not going to do anything. We're going to benefit from all this.
So final question for you, Andrew. Now, the president recently said that the people have more disposable income than ever before, even adjusting for inflation. That sounds good, right? But is there some devilment in the detail?
No, I was looking at the Bureau of Economic Analysis data on personal disposable income. It's down from its high in March, and only reason why it was high in March is because of the whole stimulus checks that were handed out to everybody. But overall, it's trending downward. It's at a 1-year low. Incomes are growing. That he's absolutely correct on that. But the cost of living is skyrocketing. Real wages are down across the board. I think the only industry that has seen real wage growth, which adjusts for inflation and with the higher hourly wages, is the leisure and hospitality industry. That's it. Everyone else is seeing a decline in real wages. Mining, logging, manufacturing, all these sectors are seeing real wages down. So I don't know where he's getting this idea that the personal disposable income is on the rise. So I guess that's just, I think a key component of Bidenomics is just fantasy.
Andrew Moran, thanks very much. Keep living the dream. Will Kyle Rittenhouse face federal charges? And what went wrong in Waukesha, Wisconsin that led to the tragic deaths of 6 folks? We'll be right back. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.